€50 mug.
You're very welcome to our first live podcast, our first podcast in front of a live audience. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thanks.
Full house too, and pleasure to share it with my good friend Timmy Long. And Rowan is not on the decks tonight, but he's here. So hi to Rowan as well. He's been a great help for us. And before we start, I just want to thank everybody for their support over the last 12 months. 12 months ago, we didn't know our arse from our elbows. We were going to start with a phone, and we grew it over time with donations from yourselves and support. So thanks everybody.
Thank you.
And without further ado, I'm going to bring on our first guest for the live podcast. His name is Willie White, and he's from Ballymun. Come on in, Willie. Good man, Will.
That's my boyfriend from Cork prison. Thanks for coming.
Yeah.
Antoinette, we used to call him.
Yeah.
Anto to everyone else.
Anthony.
Yeah.
But pleasure to have you down, Willie.
Thanks very much. Thank you, everyone in Cork. It's great to be here.
No, it's great and beautiful weather as well. So
I brought the sunshine with me.
You did, fair play to you. But listen to me. I know you, and other people here will know you. But the people that don't know you, do you want to tell us a little about who you are and where you're from?
Yeah, my name is... I feel like I'm on a dating show now. Hi, my name's Willie. My name is Willie White, and I'm from Ballymun in Dublin. Born and reared in Ballymun. Come from a small family. I'm the tallest. I'm 5'7". Growing up in Ballymun was it was challenging, to say the least. There was just me and my sister, my mother, my father, and my father was alcoholic. He was a drinker, and my mother was just kind of. She was a homemaker, and there was a lot of violence growing up in the home. So I came from trauma from an early age, and kind of carried that through most of my life. So my father would have been very violent. Father had a decent job, mother had a decent job. We wanted for nothing, everything at home. Like if you looked at us from the outside, we looked grand, but what went on behind closed doors was completely different. There was a lot of violence towards my mother from my father, and from a very young age, I started using drugs. I started taking drugs, So in the beginning, it would have been solvents.
I think that's very common, isn't it?
Yeah.
For young people to start off with links and petrol and stuff like that.
There was no links back then. Now when I was
Old Spice.
it was brew and
Our Tipex.
Hoya karate and no. So yeah, it would have been inhaling gas and sniffing glue and tinners and I took drugs from a very, very young age. I was taking drugs from probably about 7 or 8 years of age.
But doesn't it make total sense if you're growing up in a home where there's a lot of violence towards your mother, a lot of fear in the home, anxiety in the home? You're looking for an escape even from the age of 7 and 8.
Well, that's exactly where it was, because you hear people saying a lot of times that, when they take drugs or they drink, that they were out of their head. And that's what drugs done for me. That's from even that early age, it was an escape, and it used to get me out of my head from everything that went on at home, everything that I was dealing with as a kid. And I found that when I took solvents, all the pressures and all the fears and everything that was going on at home, even from a young age, the key turning in the door, I couldn't sleep when I knew my father was drinking, because I knew what was going to come home. Do you know what I mean? And the fear for a child to have from a very, very early age, of just a key turning in the door and not knowing what was going to happen, Do you know
when you're a child, 8, 9, 10, what year are we talking in Ballymun?
Oh, we're talking... Well, I moved... I lived in the inner city first, right in Temple Bar, a place called Crampton Buildings. I was born in the Coombe, like
myself,
yourself.
Yeah.
Good Dublin man we have here. And, I was born in the Coombe, then we moved to Ballymun. I was living in Ballymun from probably about 3 years of age, so drugs started about 7 or 8 years of age, solvents. It was the older lads in the area. I always kind of looked up to the crazy kind of people when I was younger. If anyone was doing all the wrong type of things. It was kind of an escape for me, and that's what I wanted to do. So from kind of that age, you know, moving on from solvents to drink, I always had that addicted kind of streak in me. Like, if I was going out with my mates and my mates were drinking 4 or 5 cans, I wanted 6 or 7 cans. You know, I always wanted, when people were drinking 2 litres of cider, I used to drink 3 litres of cider. I used to get it in a box. There was a tap on it. It was like a cushion. And it was just always more and more and more, you know.
We can definitely relate with that, isn't it? You know, like when you start drinking, it was never like 6 cans and have a laugh. It was always like 6 cans, a bottle of vodka. It was always get flattened, you know.
It was never drinking to enjoy. It was drinking to just pass out, black out, you know. I would have had a similar upbringing as yourself. There would have been a lot of violence in the family home. You know, and solvents would have been the first thing I went at. It was nail varnish and Tipex. We used to rob the local the pound shop in Holly Hill.
The reading right, remember the reading right?
And we'd go up, there was a field up where we lived in Holly Hill, and we'd go up there and we'd sniffing for the day. But our principal was so cute to what we'd be up to back then that he'd send somebody over to the house to see were we actually at home, you know, or were we sick or whatever. And I remember one day I came home, it wasn't bad enough, no, I had a lot of nail varnish all over my lips from being sniffing the bag.
Red or black?
You meant to put it on your nails.
Red. And straight in the door anyway. And back then, listen, there were different times. You know, I just looked straight in the door and I knew straight away that somebody was after calling to the house.
And the principal would have been Sean O'Shea. Anybody remember Sean O'Shea, the Irish singer? Yeah, he's
still alive.
Yeah, infamous.
I thought a pupil would have most definitely killed him by now. Anyway.
He's a famous Irish singer, but he was the principal of the school up in Knocknaheeny, but he wasn't really liked. But we leave it at that, and we go back to ourselves. but,
never heard of him. No, never.
But you know, in Ballymun at the time, we had Philly McMahon on the podcast before. He's from Ballymun too.
Yeah, Philly be a good mate of mine.
Yeah, he was saying like when he was a child growing up, you know, there was a lot of addiction, antisocial behaviour. He kind of veered away from it, but you were attracted to it.
Yeah, I was attracted to the madness. Yeah, I just wanted a bit of madness in me. Like, there was enough madness going on at home, like, you know. So I just kind of wanted an escape wherever it was, whether it was robbing horses or doing whatever, just to kind of get away from what was going on at home. I didn't want to be at home. I always went into my friends' houses and kind of went, I'd love to live here, like, and you know, I always wanted to be kind of somewhere else, but that was never the case. And growing up and getting older, school, you know, I was just a class clown in school. Like, it was never, I just hadn't got the, you know, and I don't blame my mother and father for my education or anything like that. But somewhere along the line, there was something wrong at home that I couldn't fully commit to what was going on. Because, I mean, if your mother is getting beaten around till 3 o'clock in the morning and you're trying to get up at 8 o'clock in the morning to go to school, and your mom's not getting up because, you know, she's broke up or whatever, it does have an impact, you know. So I'd have started drinking then probably at about 12 or 13 years of age. And it was grand because Christmas, a lot of people in Ballymun used to keep their drink out on the balcony. So if you could get a ladder somewhere and get up onto the first floor. So there'd be a lot of people on the first floor wouldn't be getting the drink that they thought they had on the fucking balcony, like, you know. So a lot of drink, and then smoking weed and going from there then into secondary school. I left school with no education at all whatsoever. I remember doing my intercert, and at the time,
showing your age there now.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, you used to get your results. It was written in pen, and me and my mate went back to my place, and he says, "I've got a great idea." And he put the two of them in the sink with bleach, and he took all the results out of them, and we wrote all our own results in. And about October, there was loads of letters coming to the house, and I was hiding them behind the fire. And my mother eventually found them, and they got called up to the school, and Jesus, me dad bet the bleeding head on me, you know. So there was a lot of that going on as well with my sister and me and myself, you know. There was a lot of violence towards us as well. Sometimes we getting beaten for good reason, and then other times you kind of wouldn't, like, if you just, you know, depending sometimes on how my dad was, you know.
Have you got kids of your own today?
I have, yeah.
Can you imagine, like, and Timmy has kids too, I have dogs, but
same thing.
Yeah, exactly. But when you look at your kids and you think of like how you were treated as a child, and you would never imagine doing that to your own children, isn't it very hard to understand
Yeah,
You know?
it really is. And I mean, I look at my kids when they were my age, when I started taking solvents and that, and I just can't comprehend, or understand if any of my kids ever ended up in that situation, So, yeah, I left school with no education whatsoever. Went to London when I was 16 years of age, with a mate of mine. And we lived in a squatting manor house. There was a load of us. There was a lot of drugs going on in the flat. There was heroin, and I was the only one that walked out a whole lot of them. I had a job, which was kind of weird, someone from Ballymun having a fucking job. And they done their own thing. Two of the lads that I lived with over there ended up ODing. They were a bit older than us, and they got sent home in coffins. And so I knew the dangers of drugs. And then when I went to London, it was the ecstasy scene was out, so there was a lot of people taking E's, and I remember taking E for the first time, and I thought I'd arrived, and all that love that I never got as a child, we were just starved of love and affection, there was, and I realised then in years later, and I'm kind of going back and forward, when I looked at my father's upbringing and I looked at my mother's upbringing, I realised why it wasn't happening where I was, So I lived in London for a few years, and then ended up taking too much LSD one time and went on a bad trip and had drug psychosis and ended up in a psychiatric unit in London.
What was that like?
It was great crack. As much drugs as you fucking wanted. It was like me going to Funderland after.
I know, yeah.
No, it was a very traumatic situation, not only for me, but I was going down to my uncle's because my dad's brother was always very good to me, but the day I went down to go to him, he was out of the country, and I held his missus and my cousin and their friend hostage in the house for fucking 3 days. So it was very, very heavy. And
can you remember?
The woman isn't liked a lot, by my family, and some of them are giving me money, fair play to you for putting up a hoe for fucking 3 days, But it was a horrible time, and I ended up getting took out of there by the police, and ended up in a psychiatric unit, intensive care unit in Homerton in London for nearly 7 months. Yeah.
Do you know the psychosis? Can you remember when you were in it, what you were thinking, what it was like?
Yeah, I can indeed. Yeah, I thought that people had a plot out to kill me. That's what I thought was going on. And as I was making my way down to Clapton in East London, anyone that I seen that was in a phone box or that was talking to somebody, I thought it was all geared up around me to get me somewhere to have me assassinated. There was no such thing at all whatsoever. It was just, a build-up of drugs that I'd been taking for a long time, smoking weed, taking loads of acid, and it was gonna, the warning lights were on a long, long time, And I knew somewhere it was going to give, but Jesus, what a place was to give in London where, my mother and father wasn't there, my sister, who I was really, really close to, for the whole 7 months I was there, she couldn't even come over to see me, it was just, I was in a bad way. I was on a lot of medication, haloperidol, Cogental, lithium, Haldol, Ligactol. I was really, really mentally unstable, ended up in seclusion rooms and padded cells, and just kind of thinking to myself, I thought I was going to be in this place forever. Never knew I'd get out of it,
And when you got out of it, did you go home straight away?
Fucking right, I did, yeah. Yeah, straight
Never
away.
So happy to see Ballymun Towers.
What age were you then, Willie?
When I got home, I was about 19. And all my old so-called friends kind of abandoned me because I was really, really overweight, and I was saying things that I shouldn't be saying, and I was just very, very mentally unstable. And I can understand when I look at it now, I don't kind of go to cheekies, because it was just the way I was. It wasn't kind of cool to be around, And my sister, I stayed with my sister because my mother and father had split up at this time, and she looked after me and she detoxed me off all the tablets that I was on. And I eventually got drug-free from all the tablets, and then went back taking acid again, and ended up in another psychiatric. I ended up in the Dundrum Psychiatric intensive care unit.
That's
again.
the Central Mental Hospital.
Yeah, which really isn't in the central of Dublin, so I think they just do that to fuck your head up a little bit. So then I went from Dundrum to Vincent's on the Richmond Road, so I was in 3 psychiatric hospitals. So I suppose you could say it was Psychiatric. Yeah, that's the best joke of the fucking night, to be honest with you.
But do you know, one of the medications you referred to there was Largactil. I've heard of that being described as a pig fattener. Do you know, bloats you out. And you said you come on with a lot of weight.
The amount of drugs that I was on, even when I ended up back in there for the third time, I think they just got the foils from me. I don't think they really know what to be doing with you. Like, what do you do? Like, so when I was in this place, and it was like, sometimes you kind of get, like, the drugs I was on that much drugs. I remember two of my mates coming up, and my mate says to me, "What's the drugs like that you're on?" And I says, "I genuinely cannot feel anything. I'd no feelings whatsoever." And he says to me, like, "What do you mean?" Like, and I was smoking a cigarette at the time, and I says, "This is what I mean." And I took a drag out a cigarette, and I pulled my top up, and I put the cigarette out my stomach, and I just flicked it on the ground. My two mates were like, "What the fuck is going on here?" But that was just the level of numbness from the drugs I was on, you know.
Do you know, just being active in drug addiction back then, did you really care about living or dying, you know? Because if I was to refer back to my own experience.
I didn't. I tried to hang myself in London, in the psychiatric unit, and one of the patients come in when I was kind of up on the window and that, and they got me down, and they got me back together. But there was times I could never really see that drugs was the problem in my life. Just kind of thought I was an unlucky kind of fella, like that was just taking the wrong drugs and being with the wrong people and just ending up in the wrong situations. Like, I could never actually see that I had a drug problem. So the third time when I got out and I eventually got off all them drugs again, I ended up getting into heroin, and that was just a bleeding. That was a horrifying kind of time in my life. And I knew the damages of heroin, and I knew what heroin done, and you know, I was working for two fellas doing it. Basically a run around. I was a ghillie for these two lads, bringing stuff from A to B, and I just ended up taking it one night, and then I took it the following day, and then it just kind of got into it, and they knew then I was strung out, and then everything just started going wrong in my life, you know. I started ending up in prisons, and swore I'd never use intravenously, you know, and then I ended up using intravenously, and ended up stealing on my family, ended up homeless on the streets, ended up begging on the streets. I was going out with a girl at the time, and you know, you'd be trying to feed two habits, and it was just a nightmare. Every day was just like same thing, going into prison, trying to get clean. Then you get on a methadone maintenance on a clinic. You'd be thinking, "Oh, I'm after arriving here, I've won the lottery," like, and that was never the case. Like, you know.
What was it like inside Mountjoy? Because in Cork prison would have been a relatively clean prison, you know, and a lot of dubs would come to Cork prison to detox and dry out. What was it like in Mountjoy with the heroin and methadone and stuff?
It was a kip, Mountjoy, yeah. It was a horrible, horrible place. And the one thing I'll always remember about prison is the smell of the place. You know, that I can't even describe it. You'd have to kind of know it, and to be on the land and to get that smell, to know what that smell is like, you know. But if someone put me into a room and had that smell there, I'd know exactly what it was. And it was a horrible, horrible place. And I wasn't one of these gangsters or anything like that. I wasn't a tough guy or anything. Yeah. The only bit of armour I had for getting me out of trouble is that I was good crack, like, do you know what I mean? I was a bit of a laugh, like. And most of the times that got me stoned to be saying, "Bring him with us," if I hadn't got anything. But I certainly wasn't someone that was going around knocking the bollocks out of people or anything, because most of the time I'd go into prison and I'd be like, "Right, okay, I'll practice a tough fucking walk for the next morning going out onto the landing." I'd be very, very scared and very, very frightened, you know, because a lot of people think, you know, that prison is a holiday camp, like, and I mean, it's not a holiday camp. I don't know any fucking holiday camps that lock you up at 7:30 in the evening, shut the door, let you see our family members once a week. So it takes away your freedom, and that's the punishment in itself.
And it doesn't matter if you're a drug addict that's going in and out of prison like yourself, like I was, or if you're a top gangster. Everybody in there is afraid. Everybody in there is covering up some sort of anxiety. Everybody is on edge, hyper-vigilant, isn't it?
Yeah, well, come here. As it was said there a while ago, a fella said to me, "Look, we're all only one act away from going to prison. Like one of us could go down to Patrick Street this evening, get into a row, give somebody a punch, they fall, they bang their head, they die. You go to jail, like. Do you know what I mean? Unintentionally, like, you know. So I I've seen lots of people come in. I was one of these fellas always in school and have always been through life that fucking hated people being bullied. Do you know what I mean? I didn't like bullies and I didn't like people kind of, you know, being made fools out of or whatever. So I just kind of had a soft side in me for people like that. And if someone come in that had never been in before and like that, you just try kind of, you know, take them under your wing and just, you know, try show them, you know, the right thing to do. You know, which is...
I think one of the worst things, in my experience in prison, one of the worst things is seeing fellas being bullied. There is a lot of it, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's sometimes you're powerless, you know what I mean? You'd want to be interfere and then for fear that you'll be attacked afterwards. But I remember, you know, certain situations you look and you think, like, I wouldn't treat somebody like that, you know. And
But that's how it works in there. That's how some people get by acting like that. And that is, the reality of it is some people do get what they need, or the bullying other people, particularly in prison, you know, where you have very vulnerable people coming in for the first time. They might know anybody in the landing or anything like that, and it's like the bullies can smell the fear coming in the gate when they're walking down the corridor, and they're just they have a target on their back. But that is just the reality of it.
Yeah, I'm sorry for laughing there. I'm just thinking of some incidents of fellas coming in where they'd be getting the piss taken out of them more than the bullying, you know. You'd be sending fellas in to the governor's office saying, go in and see can you walk the governor's dog up and down the North Circular Road. Do you know what I mean? And I'll go in for the bike race. There's a bike race on Friday. And half these fucking idiots to be going in like, I'm in for the bike race, you know.
No.
And they'd know in the office as well, you want to be going, what type of bike are you looking for, like, you know. Fucking idiots. But
do you know, you mentioned something there while ago, and I'm a little bit curious about it because it relates to my own story. When you found heroin, you know, before that you had a lot of psychiatric problems, you know. Did the heroin, like, the heroin took over all your emotions, feelings, thoughts, the whole lot?
Yeah.
Did the heroin knock everything else, all the psychiatric problems, to bay at that moment because you were completely addicted? So every thought you had is about your next score, how you're going to get it, this and that and the other. So did it give you a bit of space from all the psychiatric?
Yeah, it did. But I mean, all I was really doing was substituting one drug for another, like, you know. So it was like I parked up one car and I jumped into another car. Do you know what I mean? So I was still caught up in the drug problem. But the heroin kind of gave me that comfort and gave me that, it gave me a way to be able to kind of deal. Well, at the end of my using with heroin, I was just taking the drug to kind of feel some kind of normality, like, you know. Like I never wanted, when I was growing up, my hopes and ambitions wasn't to be a drug user or to be going to prison. I wanted to do different stuff, like, you know. I always had an aspiration to kind of be an entertainer and be on stage and do stuff like that. But when there's stuff going on at home that kind of puts things on pause like that, you take a different route. I know he was just one of them fellas that took a different route. And a lot of times along the way, I got moments of clarity where I said to myself, you know, I'd be using with people that I fucking hated. I'd be robbing, I'd be doing wherever, you know. And I'd be going, I shouldn't be doing this. There has to be a better way of life, you know.
Yeah, when you were talking the other while ago about, you know, being attracted to the drama and the mad scenarios, remember Gabor Mata we had on the podcast, and
I was listening to it today.
Bessel van der Kolk, I think it was Bessel van der Kolk's book, The Body Keeps the Score. He talks about you know, people that have been severely traumatised. Like, if you're in a house where there's violence all the time inflicted on you, your mother, you're always on edge, that it's a coping skill subconsciously to you that your brain shuts down the part of the brain that feels fear or feels anything really. And then people that are severely traumatised, the only time they actually ever feel alive is when there's drama and when they're caught up in either dynamics with family or prison or violence or drugs. So, like, your story is very common. It's related to ours and people in the audience, you know. So, like, people that are traumatised or people that have been through difficult experiences and they still find themselves caught up in this cycle of it's very quiet, it's very dull, and then it's mad, and there's no kind of middle ground. There's no happiness in between.
Yeah, I don't know what it was with me. I just kind of refrained from the madness. My father was a man that instilled an awful lot of fear into me from a very young age, until even as an adult, like, I used to look at him and I used to know what this man was capable of. So I wasn't one of these fellas like you talked about that was into violence or was into madness. I just kind of had this thing. And I remember my mum always saying to me growing up, you know, never put your hands on a woman, like, do you know what I mean? And it's something that I don't think any woman deserves domestic abuse or deserves to be hit, not only by a man, but by another person, like, you know. We all deserve to get through life, you know, with no drama, no violence or anything like that. So I kind of, if madness happened or there was fighting or there was someone getting cut up in prison or something like that, I kind of stayed well away from it.
Yeah.
I didn't want any of it. I kind of found, James, that it kicked up stuff for me, like, you know. It kind of brought stuff back and I could kind of see me dad being, you know, and I don't say lightly, the animal that he was when I was growing up, you know. So...
But you know, even though when you see a violent event, you're not drawn towards it. But the fact that you're actually in the proximity of a violent event is enough to make it like you're actually drawn to the prison in the first place. The fact that you were even in prison and you were in a situation where most of the audience here would never have seen anybody being sliced up. It's only a very select few people would. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But the fact that even though when you seen it, you weren't drawn to it, I suppose the fact that you were in a situation where you're actually exposed to it is enough to kind of fit with the theory. I suppose that they would say that people that are severely traumatised seek out these situations unbeknownst to themselves because it's the only time.
It actually robs you, like it actually takes your whole childhood away from you, really, because you have to set yourself up for all these moments happening. You know, as you said earlier on, there, walking in the door when he comes in from the pub, you're probably the minute you hear he's in the pub, your peace of mind is gone and you're waiting for the next 4 or 5 hours then for him to come home.
I didn't have to wait to hear he was in the pub. He was in the pub most nights, like, you know. I think the fucking person up there used to be a Shaw's in Ballymun used to think that we were going to Greek weddings, that there was that much fucking delf getting smashed every night of the week in the house, like, you know. I think if microwaves had been back in the 80s when we were there, there'd have been less violence. My dad couldn't understand why a dinner was in the oven for 9 hours. Wasn't fresh, like, do you know what I mean? So there was just a lot of stuff, and then like I ended up getting into a lot of trouble with the guards, and then the last thing was I got caught with drugs, and I ended up going on the run to London, and I was still with this girl I was going out with at the time. She followed me over. I went over, and my dad was at the retired. My dad worked for Telecom Ireland at the time, and he gave me a few quid, and I ended up going to London, and that night I spent all the money that he gave me smoking crack in King's Cross, and then I went to my mum's the next morning and told my mum I got robbed, and my mum says, oh yeah, hang on, I'll land this helicopter and you can fucking tell me the rest of the story. She knew what was going on, you know. Yeah. And some of you are just getting that, it's okay. so that had brought me on another journey. I got on a methadone maintenance in London, and then my partner come over, and then it was just bedlam. My mum moved in with a partner down the road, and we used and abused my mum's home. We both got a crack cocaine habit. I was in the worst state I'd ever been before I got sent home. I got extradited home from London. And I don't say that to sit here and kind of go, you know, I'm a gangster or anything like that. I'm not. I'm very, very far from that. But I got extradited home, and at the time I got extradited home, I was living in a car over in London. That's how glamorous my drug using was. Most of my teeth were gone in my head. I think the most embarrassing thing about the whole lot of it is that when I got nicked that day by the English police, I was wearing my ex-girlfriend's tracksuit bottoms, which had a fucking flower on the pocket of them. So it was horrible sitting waiting to go into Brixton prison. All I was worried about was the flower on the tracksuit bottoms. And I just kept sitting with my hand like this over the flower. And so I was there for 6 weeks, and I got clean. I was clean going back to Dublin. And then when I got back to Mountjoy, I went back to Mountjoy with a pair of English prison jeans on me, a jacket I'd robbed off a fella in the building site in London, which wasn't much cop. I still have the jeans at home. They're a 28 waist, right? And they fucking wouldn't go onto my ankles now at the minute. But I went home with them, and I ended up going into prison. I got 5.5 years with a review after 3.5 years with conditions that I done something about me problem, me drug addiction and that. And so I went to Mountjoy, and then I just started back using again. The minute I went in, it's like
You went
It's
back
like-
using in Mountjoy.
Yeah, like it's like come here. It's like when you hang around with people that fix cars, you'll end up fixing cars. And if you hang around with people that are taking drugs day in day out, it was inevitable I was going to pick up. Then eventually I start. A few years in, I was really back to the same thing again. My mate says to me, "There's NA meetings on of a Wednesday night up in the church. Do you want to come up with us?" And I says no. I was just too interested in getting stoned. But one night I was stoned and I went up. Your man goes, "It's great, there's fucking free cigarettes and all, you can have a cup of tea." So we went up and I went a few times, and then I started seeing people that I'd used with going to the meetings, and then my ears kind of cocked a bit and I opened my eyes a little bit more. And I used to be saying to them, "What's the story with these meetings?" And they go, "It's great." And, and they were telling me that they had a house and they had a mortgage and they drove a car, and this was fucking stuff that was alien to me. None of my mates, well, they had cars, but they weren't theirs, like. They were in houses, but none of them were fucking theirs either, like. And that stuff was alien to me, so I was attracted to that. So I remember there was a prison officer in Mountjoy, Mr. Fardell, Mark Fardell his name is, he's still in there. And my ex-partner used to babysit for him, and he come up to me and he says to me one day, he says, "If there's anything I can do for you," he says, "let me know." He says, "Now I don't mean fucking bring you in, a ladder or bring you in drugs or anything like that." He says, "If there's anything I can do to help you, ask me." And I remember just one day after having dinner, I just says to myself, "Do you know what? I fucking had enough of this." And I remember the door opening. I'm actually getting a little bit emotional.
Yeah.
And I thought everybody in the prison was looking at me like, no one was. Do you know what I mean? And I made the walk. He was up the top of the landing. And I walked up, it was like everything was in fucking slow motion. I just says, "Look, I need help." And he went, "No, but what do you want to do?" He says, "I want to get a detox. I want to go over to the medical unit." He says, "Right, okay." So a couple of weeks later, he come back. He says, "Look, you have to go to the interview." He says, "Just go." He says, "I have you. You're in." He says, "You're going to go over to this place. You're going to detox." So I went over. 10 of us went over. It was 10 of us in the group. 6 of them are dead.
Fucking hell.
3 of them are still using. And I was the only one that got clean out of them all. And I remember a fella coming in from Coolmine and saying, "If one person out of this group gets clean, the job is done." And I'm sure, like everyone else sitting there, they were all saying, "I'm going to get clean." Like, but I was saying, "I'm definitely going to get clean." Like, so then I went into the training unit and started going to NA meetings and start trying to do the right thing. And, I was really looking forward to getting out. My sister used to come up and visit me regularly. My mum was living in London still at the time. She'd come home every now and again. My dad would drop up, and I just found that, like, in most desperate situations in my life, that it was always my family that were always there for me. My so-called friends, it's like that out of sight, out of mind. I mean, when any of my mates was in jail, it was like, fuck them. Do you know what I mean? That was it, like.
Yeah.
So eventually I got out, and I moved back to Ballymun, and I went back to live with my sisters. I started going to meetings, and done what was suggested in the programme, 90 meetings in 90 days. Couldn't understand what was going on. I was thinking that after the 90 meetings, you were going to say, "Look, we're all actually fucking using. Don't say anything to anybody. There's a party on Saturday night. Drop up. We all go out with fucking heads, and then you go back to the meeting on Sunday. Say nothing to no one." That wasn't the case, So I started going to these meetings. I lived with my sister, who was very, very good to me. In my recovery, my ex-partner got pregnant, I think 20 minutes after I got out of prison. And and I was on a day programme. I was in the ACRG, an aftercare recovery group. Then when she got pregnant, I got a job and I started becoming this responsible, productive member of society. My sister, I moved out of there. I moved in with my partner and started saving to buy a house. And moved into the house, had the new baby, Mia, came along, and
Do you know what's amazing in your story? Do you know when that prison officer came to you and he just let you know he was there when you wanted it? That can be translate it to family members, friends, loved ones, anybody that needs help.
The help is there. Like
You
you just come here, listen.
You can't force somebody, but you just
No.
let them know when they're ready. You're there for them.
If
But
anybody in
until
the
then-
audience has an active addict in their family or someone that's using, leave them until they come to you.
Yeah.
Because I'm fucking telling you something.
You
They'll
can
run you
chase.
ragged.
Yeah,
They'll run you ragged. You,
can
cannot.
actually-
You can't.
Yeah.
I just say to people, look do what you're doing, you know. But when you're ready to stop, there's my phone number, like, you know, and just leave them, you know. And when the pain gets bad enough, I was getting a bit emotional there because I was talking about my sister. So my sister got diagnosed with cancer.
What age
In
was she?
recovery, she was 44 when she died, and
Sorry for your loss.
sure, come here. It was 11 years ago, but it's still raw, you know.
Is this the same sister? No, was the one that?
Yeah,
put you up?
there was only me and her.
Yeah,
I'd known her
okay.
brothers, you know, and she was always there for me.
Were you in recovery when she died?
Yeah,
At least, you know, she got to see you recover and
yeah, I was, and I was there. I remember being in the hospice, and she was asking me to help her, and I just felt so fucking helpless. Someone that had helped me all my life, I couldn't help her. I remember being up in the Mater Hospital with her, and her feet was all dry. And I says, "Well, do you want me to wash her feet for you?" Just that intimacy, you know, just help. And we knew she was gonna die, like, you know. And then eventually, when she did die, it was just such a hole in my life, you know, just such an emptiness.
but at least she passed and she wasn't worrying about you. You were by her side.
Yeah. So she's gone 11 years, and you know, life kind of took off. I started doing the comedy then with Des Bishop. You know,
Do you want to talk a little bit about that? Because Des Bishop came to Knocknaheeny too.
talk about something a bit more lighthearted. Fucking hell. Yeah.
Well done, Will, boy, well done.
So
But
Yeah.
that TV show, you might remember it, Des Bishop, Joy in the Hood. He went to all the posh areas, Knocknaheeny, Ross, Ballymun.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That's how Willie got into the comedy.
But it's mad, and I was saying to you earlier, that whole show was meant to be about me. The whole 6 weeks was meant to be about me getting out of prison and embarking on the world of stand-up comedy to be a comedian. Because I was somewhere doing an auction, and he seen me, and he seen it was very funny. So he got in touch with me. I kind of knew him a little bit, and I opted not to do the show because there were so many other people to think about. Like we talked about earlier, I'd an employer in work, I had a young child, I had people that knew me, and my anonymity was kind of very special to me. So I says, listen, I'm not going to do it. So I done to join the whole thing. Come here. Then we went on tour with him, and it was fucking great. Like, staying in the Hayfield Manor, like.
Fancy.
Fucking, I'll tell you one thing, is a different bowl of porridge than the one in Mountjoy. Fuck that. So, come here, it was great. You know what? It was amazing. And Des is a good guy, but he's a businessman. You know, he gave me a good kickstart in life and in the comedy career, and I'll always be grateful for that. And he's kept in touch, you know. But so yeah, then I started doing comedy, and then I started doing a little bit of acting. I done a bit of stuff in the Savage Eye, and I done a bit of stuff in the Irish Pictorial, and just kind of got bits and pieces, and was on different kind of programs and stuff, and it was amazing. Like, you know, we started a comedy club in Ballymun, and we'd Sarah Milligan in Ballymun doing a fucking gig like for €400. Do you know what I mean? You will not get Sarah Milligan's fucking bra for €400 at the minute. Do you know what I mean? And I just met some really, really good people along the way. You know, you'd be probably picking the names off the floor. I ended up gigging with John Bishop, Kevin Bridges, you know, lots of big names. Tommy Tiernan, Jason Bourne. Started doing all the comedy festivals, went to Edinburgh. All that stuff started to happen, you know.
What's it like walking out on stage in front of a few thousand people?
It's better than taking any drug.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, I still get nervous. Like, this is the first live audience I've been in front of in 18 months.
And the best looking.
Yeah, definitely.
It's very easy to see why the lads actually took you on tour as well. You know, you've such a nice kind of energy and aura around you. You know,
Yeah, thanks very much. My missus actually said it to me this evening, pulling into Cork. She says to me, "Are you nervous?" And I said, "I am." I says, "I'm very nervous." But I'm gonna move on. Cork has a big part in my life, and I'll come on to that now at about 6 a.m. And no, so my father in recovery has given me things that I thought would never give to me. So one big thing was me dad. I had this horrible toxic relationship with him. Wanted to kill the man all my life. So I done a bit of walk around that. As I said, I went back. I found out where my dad came from, where his family came from, a family of 16 kids in a 2-bedroom flat. I had this vision of when I come into recovery, and me and my dad sitting by a lake fishing, and that wasn't it. But what I got was great. You know, I got an understanding. I got to be able to talk to him on a level and find out about him and find out about him growing up. And I loved him. I ended up loving the man, you know. And he got fucking cancer. Fucking hell. He ended up getting cancer, and he died in 2016. And when he died, in the hospice in Harold's Cross, there was just me and him. There was nobody else. And I remember just holding him and feeling this fucking love for this man, you know, who I realised through all his faults and all his fucking defects of character that he done the fucking best that he could for me with the tools that he had in life. And I just held him and I says, look, I fucking love you. And he passed on, and I fucking miss him. I really miss him terrible,
There's
you know.
something very poetic about the whole lot of that. You know, the fact that you were in recovery to be at your sister's side, the fact that you had made amends with your father and you were able to care for him in his last days. If these events had happened when you were in addiction in London...
Oh, it wouldn't have happened. If my sister was dying and my dad was dying and there was a morphine pump beside them, it'd have been fucking getting ripped off the wall. That's the God's honest truth.
The growth that you have, like, it shows the growth within you as a person to be able to sit with your dad in his last days as well.
Yeah, it's mad. And at that time, just before he died, I'd split up with my partner after 22 years. My dad was diagnosed with cancer. I got threw out of the house where I lived, and I ended up moving to Cork. Well, not moving. The boss, I worked for a crowd down in Cork called Martin Scaffolding on Carrigaline. And I ended up walking all around Ringaskiddy and, you know, all around Cork. And I have to say, I come down here to Cork, and I'm not just saying it, the people in fucking Cork welcomed me with open arms and were really, really good fucking people and really special people. And I'll be forever grateful. Even where I stayed up in Ballincollig, which is kind of twinned with Ballymun. And
it couldn't be more different.
Ballincollig was all right. There's some fucking gang down there, the RPG or whatever.
The CPGs.
That's them, yeah.
Castle Bar.
The minute they heard I was from Ballymun, they used to fucking hide, like, you know. No, so I ended up in Ballincollig, and then I ended up moving up to the posh part up in Douglas. And I used to be going into Denny's, into the gym, and you know what, it was what I really thought at that part of my life, at that time in my life, was a horrible fucking time. You know, my father was dying, relationship was at the breaking up, with 2 kids, and it was just, I was kind of going, what do I do? Like, so I just recommitted myself to doing what I done when I got clean first, you know. Start going back to meetings, got a new sponsor, start writing steps, start kind of trying to take my mind off everything else that was going on, like, you know. Then eventually the house that I bought in Laytown, I ended up moving back into that house when I went back to Dublin eventually after 10 months.
That's by the beach, isn't it?
Yeah, right beside the sea, yeah. And I remember going into the house on my own when the tenants had moved out, and standing in the hallway, all I had was a table and chairs and a fucking bed upstairs, and I was going, right, I could have cried about it, but I just says, look, this is a blank canvas, this is a new chapter in my life. 2 weeks later, I done a gig. This is mad. And there was a prize of a double bed in it. And I said to myself, I'll buy a fucking few tickets and see can I get this bed right. And I never won the bed. But the fella that won the bed wasn't there, and I was talking to his mate. He says, my mate's at the winning that bed. I says, ask him, does he want to sell the fucking bed? So we rang him and gave me the phone. I says, listen, I says, I'm the comedian that was doing the gig. I says, I need a bed. He says, me, you fucking telling a joke? And I says, no, I wish I was, like, you know. I says, will you take 50 quid for the bed? No, just chancing my arm, like. He goes, yeah, give him the 50 quid. So I remember getting a rope and tying it to the car and driving from Dublin up the fucking Laytown, up the motorway, and the mattress was flapping like this. But eventually I put a home, you know, I put a house around me, and my main priority was always my family, my kids. You know what I mean? My kids have never seen me drunk, have never, you know, seen me lose my head. I've completely broken the chain of what my father came from, you know? Completely. Like, my kids, still to this day, I hugged them, I kissed them, I loved them, you know, unconditionally. Sometimes I want to choke them, but apparently you're not allowed to do that anymore.
Most of the time.
Yeah, so life moved on, and I ended up living back in Laytown, and then after a while, things were dead in the water with my relationship, and I ended up meeting another girl who he has met there, and I'm not going to start crying now. Come here, I was very lucky, and she doesn't have cancer. Thank God. But I actually I've met the fucking woman in my dreams. Like, do you know what I mean? I really, really have.
There's brownie points there.
Yeah, no, do you know what? She knows that I don't need to be sitting here in front of 100 people to say that. I sit down and I tell her. She gets my madness. You know, we get each other. We get on like a house on fire. And she's a really, really big part of my life. And she's like my best mate as well. And we just have a fucking laugh, like, you know.
I just want to say I met the woman of my dreams too, jiggy later on. We'd have been roasted there now. We didn't jump in, like, you should fucking see it.
Yeah, and then I ended up doing this fella got in contact with me on Twitter. One day I got a message on Twitter. Well, I got a lot of messages on Twitter, but this message in particular came along, and it says, hi, my name is Phelim Cannon, because that was his name. And he said, we're doing a play. We're wondering, would you be interested in getting involved in doing this play with us? And I went, yeah, I'll go along and I'll see you and I'll have a chat with you and see what the story is. So I went in to meet this fella. He says, look, we're a production company called Broken Talkers. We're doing a piece on prisons and addiction. And we spoke to the music teacher in Mountjoy. They went into the music teacher in Mountjoy in the training unit, and they said, if you could give us one name of a person to do this play, because it was meant to be initially a one-man play. He said to the music teacher, who would you get to do the play? He said, I get a fella called Willie White, he says, he's a fucking great lad. He's got a great story. He says, he's a stand-up comedian. He says, try him. He says, that's who I'd ask to do it. So I went in and I seen this fella and seen, there was another guy there as well called Gary Keegan, and I went in to see them. And I thought when I went in that the fucking play would be written and everything was done, and I just have to get the lines, you know, and but it wasn't. It was a really, really special journey. So they had a professor of criminology, Dr. Catherine Cox, who'd been in Mountjoy for 15 months doing work with lifers. The two lads had been in there. They got all this stuff together, and then they started taking my story and amalgamating it with that stuff and the stuff in the prison. Then eventually Gary, who was one of the guys who was in the play, he read in one day for where I was meant to be doing the play on my own. So he ended up, it was just beautiful the way it happened. So he ended up coming into the play. So it ended up two of us in the play. And it aspired that he was an ex-victim of crime over in London. He'd been mugged. So it was basically him telling his story as an ex-victim of crime and me telling my story as an ex-prisoner. So we got this play together. It was called The Examination. And we toured it, and we done the Dublin Fringe Festival. We done the Edinburgh Fringe Festival. We, went around the country and that. And then there was awards for the Dublin Fringe Festival. And my partner Linda says to me on the Sunday morning, I'd been nominated for Best Actor at the Dublin Fringe Festival, and we'd been nominated for Best Production. So she said to me on the Sunday morning, are we going to go into this thing in Whelan's? And I went, sure, fuck it, we'll go in. But I genuinely, hand on my heart, had no idea. So I went in, and anyway, and they called out I won fucking best actor out of 700 people. Right?
Congratulations, Bula Boss.
For the thing, and we won best production as well for that as well. And I remember going up and giving the speech, and the speech was basically saying, you know, for people that are in addiction or people that are trying to get clean, that we're not all fucking scumbags, and there's a good person underneath the layers, you know, underneath us if you really want to look for yourself, you know.
And that's exactly kind of why we started the podcast, you know, to let people have their stories and, you know, to create a bit of awareness that it's not so black and white. The good people are on the outside, the bad people are on the inside. You know yourself, Willie. A lot of people in prison are victims themselves, you know, victims of trauma and abuse and poverty and violence and stuff, you know.
Yeah, we ended up winning then the Irish Times Best Production Award as well. So the play just kind of took off, and we were booked in to go to a theatre festival in Paris, a theatre festival in Norway. All these things was booked. I'd a lawyer working on the case to try to get me into Australia, because unfortunately with my criminal convictions and the person, you know, my past, which is, I mean, the last time I was in trouble with the fucking guards was 1997, like, and that still tarnishes my past for me going into the States and that. Now, come here, I can get onto the online form and go, no, I was never in trouble. I know loads of lads that are in recovery who've been in trouble, who've got into the States, but I was going on a working visa. Yeah. So I couldn't do it that way, you know. So, look, we'll kind of see what happens. So
I think that's something that we're going to face too, you know. When we do our big US tour, Timmy, we'll have to go in through Mexico.
Yeah.
We brought in them both.
But listen to me, what's the plans for the future? Have you any live shows coming up?
It's like when you rang me up and asked me what my diary was like. There's fuck all in it. I'm booked in for the Laughter Lounge. I am for Christmas. Apart from that, there's nothing really happening. The play got the green light from the Irish Arts Council, so we're going again next year.
Brilliant.
So that's all going to happen. So that's kind of what happened when we were booked for all this stuff. COVID came in. You know, like, and it was mad. Like, this year was just like a big year. It was like, I was 20 years clean. I was 50. I became a grandfather for the second time.
Congratulations.
You know, so it was a really good year. And I suppose, like, we've been all through fucking dark times at the minute. And I mean, the thing about this podcast in particular, and some podcasts like it, is that we're all no different than anybody else. We all suffer with our mental health. Do you know what I mean? We all find it difficult sometimes to say to people, listen, I'm not all right, like, you know what I mean? And it's like that saying what they use, isn't it? It's okay not to be okay, like. You know, if you're not all right, just tell someone that you're not all right and talk about it and get on with it. There's too many people, you know, taking their own lives, and there's too many people doing the wrong things in life because they feel that it's a pride thing, especially with young men, like. You know, so
it's a great point, and like I'm going to finish up on that because I want to get a few questions off the audience. And
cool.
You're a great talker, but one thing.
Are we finished?
But I hope we get some good questions. But one thing when you were talking there, you know, it was like you know, we don't look back on our past looking to blame anybody, you know. And Gabor Mate said to us, he said, like, trauma doesn't begin with anybody. You know, there's nobody to blame. Like, there's a context to your father's life, your mother's life, their parents. But the key is to be aware of it, and we'll all heal together. And you're after healing now, and you give your children such a great chance. You know, and you're a great man. It's my first time meeting you tonight. Yeah. Such a great energy off you, as Timmy says, you know, and you know, you're a good man. You're going to go do good things, and I can't wait to see the live show. I hope you come to Cork. And
we will definitely.
We'll definitely be coming up to Ballymun because we have a few guests up there, and we've got a big following up there. The Ballymun task force and all that. Like,
and but, it's very important as well to mention as well. It's great to see a man to show emotion as well. You know, I see.
Yeah, I'm just a big fucking teddy bear, Timmy.
But you know what? For somebody who has experienced a lot of violence in their life growing up, you know, like yourself and my own life. To show any form of emotion was the last thing I could do, because when you show emotion, you're showing how vulnerable you are, you know, to be picked on a little bit more. And it's actually great to see somebody just cry, you know.
Yeah.
And it shows other men that it's okay to show their emotions as well, because we live in times that are actually changing. Like 30 years ago, you could never show emotion. If you were a little boy and he fell or something like that, you tell him get up, and if he started crying, if he was genuinely hurt,
Give him something to cry about.
Yeah, you know. So it's just great to see that.
I echo that. Brilliant. I wonder, does anybody any comments or questions for Willie, me, or Timmy? There's no mic for you, so just shout away.
Pornhub. Any other questions?
Just a good question. You know, I suppose when people actually wake up from being caught up in addiction and they see that there's another life there, you know, without crime, drugs, and violence, you just gain this internal drive that just keeps pushing you forward, and you start creating with all that energy that you used to get drugs, to rob, all these different things, you know. And that's the way it is for me. But it's also wanting to be a better person, you know, a better father, a better husband to my wife, you know, and just to help as many people. Like, I'd be quite emotional now as well, like Willie, and I would have to fight back the tears as well most of the time. But when I look at myself being like that, I can really look deep within myself and see that young child that could have been, but is becoming now. You know, that young child that really had so much to offer, but because of my own circumstances, I wasn't able. And it's just keep moving forward and help as many people as you possibly can to get into recovery, and just share it. Just share.
Yeah, it's exactly what you said. It's what motivates me is just trying to help someone else. You know, the help that was given to me, I tried to give to others. You know, and there's no hopeless cases, like, you know. I heard a fella saying a great thing once. He says, I was at an NA meeting, and he says, for every nut that walks in the door, we've a spanner to fit it, like, you know. And it's very, very true. Like, I've seen hopeless. Like, I mean, I was a hopeless case. You were hopeless cases. I mean, there's hope for the hopeless people. It's like failure isn't falling down, like, it's staying down. I mean, if you've got the ability to get up out of the gutter and get back up on your feet, like, I mean, I was walking through the city today looking at, you know, there's addiction in every city. Like, it's not just Cork City, it's Dublin as well. It's all over the place. And I mean, all them people that you kind of turn your head to or get on your phone to when you see or whatever, they all belong to somebody. Yeah. You know, and probably suffer with trauma. I just got lost somewhere along the way. But I mean, when the time is right.
But you know, when you look at them people, and some people might look at them and think like, oh, they're after giving up. But there's a tremendous amount of resilience in them too. The fact that they're still soldiering on in spite of everything they're experiencing and have experienced. They're still alive. They're not looking to throw themselves into the river. You know, they're not. The drugs is probably keeping them alive at the moment. You know. But to answer your question, what motivates me to keep going, I suppose, is when you just build momentum. You know, when you set out in tasks and you start getting results. And you know, when we started out doing this, and then people started watching it, and we get comments. And last week there, I called up to a 73-year-old super fan in Harvey Road. You know. She pulled my mum up by Super Value and says, no, I love the podcast. She watches it religiously every Saturday morning, and that's great motivation. You know, why would we dream of stopping? We got an email from a fella from Mayfield the other day. He's after been watching the podcast in prison, and he emailed me the other day saying that he was looking for meetings, he's looking for a list, he's looking to go to treatment. That's the motivation for us, you know what I mean? Like, we bring this to, you know, for people from the age of 73 up in Harvey Road, people in Cork prison. It's, you know, it's helping a lot of people, so that's a big motivation for us. Anybody else? Me mum, I knew she was going to ask a question.
Did you put the washing out?
You never brushed your teeth.
Oh, manky mouth.
She's definitely your mother.
Definitely my mother.
She can fucking talk as well, I can tell you that.
But you know what, Mujalla, to answer that, I suppose what was coming into my head is we started off as two people. Now, James is all about policy. I hadn't a clue about policy until he started talking it, basically. But the numbers of people are growing, you know. We started off as two voices talking to each other. Now it's a collective of people, and people are really starting to talk about it. So that's what we're doing. And when the group gets big enough and noticed, then policies will start changing.
Yeah, and I don't think, like, if we had Micheál Martin up on the stage here, it doesn't matter what even if Micheál Martin agreed with everything we said, there's a whole civil service behind him that he needs to convince. So I suppose what we do, the other day we got an email from this lady. She was outdoor dining in Cork City, and this guy was around begging at the tables, you know. So she gave him a few quid, and he said to her, he says, ever since the lads started the Two Norries podcast, that people are a lot kinder to us. So that just shows us that there's a collective consciousness coming from this, and I think that's the best thing we can do, because that has to filter. The more people that we can get to change their perception, it's better than talking to Micheál Martin if his constituents are saying it to him. You know, so that's kind of indirectly will affect policy eventually, I think.
Yeah, just to say, it was a very good question as well, and I personally think I've got a mate of mine. It's mad because I was talking about going into primary schools before kids make that switch to secondary school. Because I think when you go into 4th years, that's when all the devilment kind of starts. But if you can go into 5th class or 6th class, I grew up in an area in Ballymun where, believe it or not, we're a prison governor from my area. So I was thinking of trying to get a programme together with me and him that we go in and say, look, we're both from the same areas. He ended up becoming the governor of Mountjoy prison, and I ended up becoming the prisoner. And kind of just saying to kids, look, it's a lottery with people becoming addicted to drugs. You know, one person might be able to take a line of coke once a month, and that's good. And then just that one person takes a line of coke and just has that addictive gene in them or whatever it is, and just sends them completely off. So I think definitely something needs to be done for it. Regarding policy, I don't know. But schools, primary schools, something should be done by the government to catch them before they make the switch over to secondary, and just try help them, you know. Get them a bit of understanding. I'm not talking about going in and frightening the lives out of them or anything like that. Go in with a good story, someone that has a bit of experience, myself or yourselves, and just tell them, look, at this is what could happen. Are you willing to take that chance, like, you know?
In terms of, like, it's a lottery, you know, if you take drugs and you end up in addiction, to a certain extent it is, but you're more likely to win that lottery if you're from Ballymun or Knocknaheeny or fucking Mayfield, or, you know, no offence to anybody from those areas, but, you know, people, there's way over representation in treatment centres and prisons for people from disadvantaged areas. So, last question or comment? Go on.
Well done.
Well done.
All the boss. What's your name? Just for people that didn't hear you, in summary, Peter is in recovery almost 3 years now. In a good place, has his family next to him. It's his first time coming to the podcast. Yeah, but you've been diagnosed, you've an illness since October, and look, everybody here will send you healing energy over the weekend. And look, thanks for coming, and best of luck with everything.
Thanks, Peter.
Look, we'll One more. With 3 minutes, one more. Go on, Willie.
Tell us your best joke about Cork people, Willie. Go on.
You're fucking joking, boy. Okay, I'm going to tell you a joke. I'll tell you a couple of jokes. So,
you've got 3 minutes.
And what about Ballymun? Why did the lifeguard not save the hippie? It was too far out, man. I'm going to give you the opportunity, right? So if you want to hear a clean joke or a dirty joke, right?
Dirty.
So if you want to hear a dirty joke, put your hands up. It's kind of half and half, so I'm going to go with the clean one, right? So here's the clean joke. So this fella is driving a bus, right? And he's heading down to West Cork. He's heading down to Clonakilty. I'll bring fucking Cork into it, right? So he's heading down to Clonakilty and he's after coming from the city in Cork. But he has 56 deaf and dumb people on the bus with him, right? And he's after been driving. He's after collecting a load of them up in Dublin and he's on the way back down. He's bollocks. He goes into this little pub just outside Macroon there, you know. It's Monday afternoon. It's fucking lashing rain. He goes in. He says to your man behind the counter, he goes, how's it going? Because he was from Dublin. And he says, listen, I have a coach outside. I have 56 deaf and dumb people on it. Probably more Kerry than fucking Cork.
Or Wales.
Or Wales, yeah. I've got the coach outside. So he says, can I bring them in for a drink? Like, I need to get a sleep. Your man goes, not a bother. He was from Dublin, the fella behind the bar, you know. He goes, not a bother. He says, bring them all in. He says, there's no one in the fucking pub, like, you know. Your man, the Cork fella, says to him, he says, well, listen, he says, I got to tell you something. Your man goes, what? He says, if for any fucking reason you see one of them or any of them standing there going like this, he says, I want you to come straight out to the coach and wake me up. I'll be on the back of the coach. Your man goes, all right. He says, well, how will I know what drinks do you want? He goes, fucking simple. He'll just point at them. They're top shelf forever. Your man goes, bring them fucking in. The Cork fella goes out. He gets them all into the pub. They're in the pub about 20 minutes. Your man has never made as much money in all his fucking life, right? The jukebox on. I don't know where the fucking jukebox was on. They're playing pool. They're pointing at this. They're pointing at that. Drinking. Next of all, one of them goes up. He goes like that. Points at the Guinness. Dublin fella goes to pull the fucking point. There's nothing in it. He says, oh, I better go down to the cellar. Just as he's going down to the cellar, he looks over in the corner and there's a fella standing there like that. He goes, fuck this, I'll never make this much money again. Goes down to the cellar, changes the keg of Guinness. He comes back up. The fucking whole lot of them, every one of them is all standing there like that. He goes, oh, fuck this. Runs out to the coach in the car park, goes down to the back seats, wakes your man up. He says, quick. Your man goes, what the fuck is wrong? He's quick. Get into the pub. Goes in, there's the fucking whole lot of them. The bus driver goes, oh, for fuck's sake. Dublin fella goes, what's wrong? He goes, they're after starting the fucking sing song. We never get them out of here.
Very good. We leave it there, Willie, thanks. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.